Is Madison even showing up? Carter asked, halfway through a bite of Wagyu steak, waving his fork like he was leading an orchestra made of arrogance. I stood 5 feet away, ignored by the seating chart, but not by the waitress who handed me the itemized bill for the compliance dinner I had personally arranged. She just handles the paperwork. He chuckled to the investors, like I was some dusty printer that occasionally jammed but mostly stayed out of the way. The table laughed. Not all of them, but enough. And just like that, my 9 years at Halbrook Systems were reduced to a punchline between truffle fries and venture cap cocktails. I didn't say a word. I just smiled, poured myself a glass of water, and watched him stumble through half-remembered acronyms like SOC and Zero Day, as if they were props from a high school play. The investors nodded politely, but their silence was louder than he realized. That was Carter's superpower. He mistook disinterest for admiration and warnings for applause. So yeah, that's how it began. Not with a firing or a scream or even a demotion, just a sentence. She just handles the paperwork. You hear that enough times, it stops being an insult and starts sounding like a challenge. Carter had only been acting CEO for 3 months, ever since his father, the real founder, decided to step back and focus on vision. That was rich, considering the old man still emailed daily asking why the new fridge filter hadn't arrived. But Carter had the keys now, and the frat boy prince wasted no time turning our compliance-focused software company into his own personal startup playground. First came the branded hoodies, then came the kombucha fridge, then came the quiet replacement of our entire tracking system with a Notion board called the Hustle Hub. I wish that were a joke. Suddenly, our VP of InfoSec was reporting to a guy named Blake, whose biggest professional credential was a podcast called Disrupting Disruption. The marketing lead was replaced by Carter's college roommate, whose LinkedIn bio simply said, vision, grit, swag. Meanwhile, I kept the machine from catching fire. I finalized the master service agreements for the Redline deal. I filed the annual data transparency updates with our external counsel. I redlined the access protocol for our new offshore team. I submitted our quarterly incident report. Clean, 0 issues, thanks to the framework I'd built. And every file, every timestamp, every log backed up to a private server Carter didn't even know existed. My insurance policy. Still, I noticed the air shift. My invite to the Q2 GTM sync vanished. Suddenly, I was CC'd instead of directly addressed. When I asked about the investor memo referencing an AI-powered compliance dashboard, Carter blinked and said, "Oh, I thought you were on formatting now." Formatting. That was when the gut feeling started, the sticky sense of being edged out. Not by confrontation, but by omission. A slow erasure. One Thursday, I found myself alone in the so-called compliance war room, really just a supply closet with a folding chair and a flickering light. Nursing cold coffee when I found a sticky note on my desk. PLZ Review Vendor Flows. It was attached to a printout of a diagram I had built. Except, the arrows were reversed. The terms were misspelled. The data stripped of context and dressed up in glossy, colorful nonsense. It wasn't just wrong. It was dangerous. If anyone outside the company saw that version and thought it represented our actual protocol, we'd be finished. I didn't fix it. Not then. Instead, I opened a new folder, titled it Carter Deck Edits, Redacted, uploaded both versions, noted the date and time, and smiled. Not because I had a plan, yet, but because I'd seen this movie before. Carter thought he was the director. I was the one running the projector. The next wave came on a Monday. Of course it did. Carter strutted in with a tan-skinned consultant named Trent, who looked like he moisturized with Bitcoin. Tan loafers, black turtleneck, clipboard of buzzwords. "This is our new capital raise strategist," Carter announced, like we'd all been praying for someone to teach us how to say synergy with more passion. Trent pointed at departments like a game show host. "We'll sunset this, merge that, move compliance under operations." Apparently, legal, security, and compliance were now back-end noise. My team and I were reclassified as operational support. That's like calling a seatbelt decorative. Priya, one of my analysts, asked if we'd still handle MSA oversight. Carter gave that smirk, the kind that makes your skin crawl. Don't worry, it's covered. We've got SOC2 basically wrapped. I felt that in my spine. SOC2 isn't something you wrap. You bleed for it. I had led both Type 1 and Type 2. I had coordinated every control, every audit, every access certification. And this man had done exactly none of it. I said nothing. I didn't argue. I just nodded, because silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. Later that same day, an email from legal confirmed what I already suspected. Carter had officially removed me from the chain of authority. My signature line on all MSA sign-offs was replaced with a blank box labeled Executive Review, which in Carter speak meant either himself or Trent. I didn't flinch. I printed the email, circled that line in red ink, and filed it neatly in my private archive, the same one that already held his doctored diagrams. Then I opened a new browser tab and typed slowly, Federal Auditor Certification SOC2 Specialization Expedited Pathway. The portal blinked to life like a dare. It wasn't revenge yet. It was armor. In compliance, a certified federal auditor has teeth. If you see fraud and don't report it, you're complicit. That's the law. So, I filled out every form, attached every credential I'd earned in 9 years, uploaded each audit I'd led, and paid the fee from my own pocket. 2 days later, while everyone else attended a culture offsite at a boutique brewery, Carter grabbed the mic during trivia night and shouted, "Big news coming next week! 300 million big!" The room cheered. I sipped my ginger ale and stared at the label. Back in the office, the investor deck started circulating. Trent sent it around like scripture. I opened it and froze at slide 14, SOC2 certified. Bulletproof controls printed in bold over a Frankenstein diagram stitched from 2 systems we'd retired a year ago. It wasn't just dishonest, it was criminally reckless. I saved a copy under a new title, Halbrook Investor Pitch Fraud Risk Draft Want.pdf, locked it in my encrypted folder, and waited for my license approval. People think silence is weakness, but in compliance, silence is where the evidence lives. By 11:42 p.m. that Tuesday, my apartment lights were dim except for the cold glow of 2 monitors. My cat, Reggie, had given up on me hours earlier. I was halfway through the auditor coursework, dense modules on data integrity, breach liability, encryption logging, the dry stuff Carter called nerd glue. I took notes like I was preparing for war, because I was. Every clause memorized was a future weapon. Meanwhile, the circus continued. Carter announced a brand refresh. Because nothing says trustworthy like a startup photo shoot. The compliance team got company headshots. I wasn't invited. I found out when Priya texted me a selfie captioned, "Where are you?" They said you had a scheduling conflict. I didn't reply. I just stared at the photo, my team standing in front of a whiteboard I'd designed, holding clipboards with protocols I'd written. In the center, Carter posing like a visionary monk. My people looked uneasy, but they smiled anyway. Fear makes good actors. That afternoon, a company-wide email hit everyone's inbox. Subject: Operational Clarity Update. New focus areas. It read, "Going forward, Madison will be focusing on documentation formatting and archival alignment to support our new information velocity goals. Please route all strategic compliance questions to Blake or myself." Archival alignment, information velocity. It read like someone threw corporate jargon into a blender. I stared at the sentence until it almost unsaid itself. Then I laughed. A sharp, breathless laugh that ended in a cough. I forwarded the message to my personal email, saved the raw HTML, and dropped it into a new folder titled Public Revisionism, Carter Edition. Timestamped, as always. Then I opened a terminal window. What I typed wasn't flashy, just a simple automation script that logged into our internal compliance Slack channel using a dormant admin token and backed up every message, file, or DM containing keywords like audit, SOC, investor, or Madison. The system encrypted the data and exported hourly backups to a private vault only I could decrypt. Not paranoia, just foresight. I'd seen this movie before. The following week, the pitch season ramped up. Investors from coast to coast were booked for pre-briefs. Trent moved into our glass-walled conference room full-time, surrounded by candles, whiteboards, and a Bluetooth speaker looping ambient tech beats. Carter paraded in and out like he was starring in a docuseries titled Founders at Work and Vibes. I was told to attend the first major pre-brief for support. No chair was offered. I stood behind the glass wall like a potted plant someone forgot to water. Carter wore a navy blazer and that smug, overgelled hairstyle he thought screamed visionary. Trent started with fluff. Carter followed with flash. When the senior partner from Avex Capital finally asked about system-level risk mitigation, Carter gave an answer that made my skin crawl. Oh, we've got protocols, full-stack controls, streamlined audit trails, locked in. The partner narrowed her eyes. And who oversees that internally? Carter grinned. We run a lean team, no red tape, operationally agile. My nails dug into my palm. That was lie number 4. No, 5. There hadn't been a real risk posture review in 4 months. Automated dashboards had replaced human oversight, and Blake's team didn't even know how to spell ISO. I felt the weight of the leather binder in my bag, the one I'd started filling quietly, page by page. Screenshots of altered diagrams, metadata trails, internal Slack objections. Every single one dated, sourced, annotated. Behind the front cover, a single page labeled Exhibit A, Misrepresentation of Security Controls, Section 4.3b. I didn't plan to use it, not yet, but I knew a storm was coming. After that Avex meeting, Carter did his usual victory lap through the hallway, fist-bumping Trent like they'd just closed Series C instead of walking straight into regulatory hell. That's how we do it, he said, breezing past me without even a glance. I gave him a smile so small it could have been mistaken for a twitch. Then I walked back to my desk, opened the investor deck, and left a single comment in my local copy. Slide 14, falsified diagram, no system-level mapping verified, potential violation of compliance representation standards. I saved, encrypted, archived, and closed the file. People assume control means raising your voice, but real control is quiet. It's the kind that waits, patient and precise, until someone pulls the wrong thread. That's what I was doing, waiting. The next morning, a freshly printed flowchart landed on my desk. 4 pages, full color, new logo at the top, complete with abstract hexagons Trent claimed symbolized data harmony. At first glance, it looked legitimate. Boxes, arrows, the right buzzwords sprinkled in for flavor. But to anyone who actually understood our architecture, it was gibberish. Whoever made it thought multi-factor authentication meant asking a user twice. My name sat neatly at the bottom. Approved by Madison R. Cole, Compliance Operations Lead. A forged signature. My breath caught, not from panic, but from realization. I'd just been handed the rope they'd hang themselves with. I stood, crossed the room to the supply closet, pulled a red sticky tab from the back of the drawer, and wrote 2 words on it in black pen, Appendix A. Then I signed my initials below it and attached the tab to the corner of the chart. The appendix didn't exist, yet. But it would, and when it did, Appendix A would detail, in excruciating precision, every lie embedded in that document. My initials weren't agreement, they were breadcrumbs. When I turned around, my intern, Josh, was standing there holding a binder like a shield. Are we in trouble?" he asked. I didn't look up. Not yet, but clean your inbox. And if Blake forwards you anything, check the source before replying. He nodded, wide-eyed, and backed away like he'd just touched a live wire. Smart kid. I spent the next few hours cataloging everything. Every altered pitch slide, every replaced diagram, every mismatched dataset. I requested 2 printed copies of the most recent investor deck from the internal system, under reason for record. Possible misrepresentation pending review. I assumed no one would read the request, but if they did, even better. By the end of the day, the envelope landed on my desk. I slipped it into my bag with the growing binder at home, my quiet indictment. Weeks passed, each new lie layered over the last like sediment. And I let it. Sometimes doing nothing is the loudest move on the board. The real storm hit on a Thursday morning during the Lurwin Partners pitch, the 5th meeting of the series. The conference room was arranged like some corporate shrine to ambition. Glass walls, espresso station, sleek chrome chairs. Everyone had a nameplate. Everyone but me. I was tucked away in the corner, half hidden behind a decorative plant dying from overwatering. Carter strutted in 5 minutes late, blazer draped over his shoulder like a magazine cover model. He clapped his hands once and smiled. Let's talk about certainty. Lurwin's partners were seasoned, sharp, patient, dangerous. They didn't interrupt. They let you hang yourself with your own presentation. Carter launched into his script, talking about predictive resilience and compliance you can bank on. Then he clicked to slide 14, the same fraudulent flowchart, projected in all its glossy, expensive glory. Our audit trail, he said proudly, tapping the screen with a Sharpie, is bulletproof. End-to-end visibility. Every protocol tied to an owner. No ghosts. The room stayed silent. Finally, a woman in a slate gray blazer leaned forward. Can we get verification from your compliance lead? Carter laughed. Oh, Madison? He gestured vaguely over his shoulder without turning. She just handles the paperwork. The words landed like déjà vu. My heart didn't race. My pulse didn't spike. I just reached into my bag and unzipped the black leather binder. Slowly. No drama. No noise. Inside were neatly labeled tabs. Slide 14. Diagram misrepresentation. Signature logs. Alteration timeline. SOC2 control matrix. Appendix A notes. And behind them, my newly issued federal auditor's license, encased in a transparent sleeve. I didn't pull anything out. Not yet. I just placed the closed binder on the table's edge, its presence enough to change the air in the room. One of the Lurwin partners glanced at it, then at me. Carter kept talking, oblivious, until she interrupted again. So, you're asserting Halbrook Systems is SOC2 compliant as of this quarter? Carter nodded confidently. Absolutely. Every box checked, every control verified. Can that be independently verified by your internal compliance officer? She pressed. He turned toward me for the first time all morning. Of course, Madison's got it all documented. I met his eyes and unzipped the binder. I didn't rush. I didn't speak. I just lifted the binder's cover, pulled out a neatly bound packet secured with a rubber band, and laid it flat on the table. The label, written in black marker, read, Exhibit A, Misrepresentation of Security Controls, Section 4.3b. Carter blinked, confusion flickering across his face as I met his gaze. Would you like to verify the claim? I asked quietly. The air in the room changed, like static before a lightning strike. One of the Lurwin partners, the woman in gray, leaned forward and reached for the packet. She slid the band off, flipped it open, and started reading. Page 1. Side-by-side screenshots of the original flowchart versus the altered version Carter had approved. Color-coded, time-stamped, metadata intact. Page 2. Internal Slack messages showing compliance team objections. Highlighted, unresolved. Page 3. An email thread where Carter had responded to a flagged security concern with, LOL, make it sexier. Page 4. Audit logs showing manual redactions. Page 5. Carter's initials approving the edited flowchart. Annotated with investors. Don't care about this stuff. And behind it all, like a quiet blade, my federal auditor's license sealed in its sleeve. Undeniable. Official. Carter shot to his feet, hands raised like he could physically stop what was happening. Okay, Madison, what is this? He demanded, half snarling, half smiling. What are you doing? I stayed seated. My voice was calm, measured, surgical. What I'm required to do by law when I witness a material misrepresentation of compliance status during an investor meeting. The lead investor, Mr. Harrow, a man whose calm could unnerve a judge, tilted his head. You're a licensed federal auditor? I nodded. As of 3 weeks ago. Certification complete. Active status. A ripple of silence spread around the table. Harrow exhaled slowly, leaned back, and said to his associate, Get legal on the line. Carter barked. She didn't tell anyone. She's not even... This isn't real. This is sabotage. His voice cracked halfway through the sentence. No one responded. The only sound was the soft turning of pages as the Lurwin associate continued reading. This, I said evenly, is what happens when you confuse silence for consent. Across the table, another partner stood and began typing furiously on his laptop. A third made a call. Carter looked around, pale, sweating, still trying to find a lifeline. You blindsided me, he hissed, his voice trembling now. You blindsided me! I tilted my head slightly, eyes steady. No, I said. I warned you. He froze. I logged every objection. I time-stamped every change. I sent 3 high-priority emails flagging inaccuracies in your pitch deck. You archived 1, deleted 2, and told Blake I was being old school. His mouth opened, but I cut him off before he could make another excuse. You didn't think I mattered. The silence that followed wasn't ordinary silence. It was the kind that hums. Clinical, surgical, final. The kind of quiet that fills courtrooms and server rooms right before a system shuts down. One of the associates stood up. We need a 10-minute recess, she said sharply. Everyone out. Don't touch your devices. Harrow nodded and pulled out his phone. I'm calling regulatory counsel. The third investor was already on the line, pacing. Yes, he said into the receiver. Halbrook's compliance is in question. No, not later. Now. Carter just stood there, shoulders tight, eyes darting, like someone waking up from a dream into a nightmare. This is an ambush, he muttered weakly. I didn't respond. I simply gathered the packet, restacked the pages, slid the license back in its sleeve, and returned everything to the binder with slow, deliberate precision. Not dramatic, methodical. As the investors filed out, Harrow paused at the door. He looked at Carter, then at me. You stay, he said. It wasn't a question. I nodded once. When the door closed, Carter remained outside the frosted glass, jaw clenched, pacing like a caged animal. Inside, the room fell into a heavy, deliberate quiet. Harrow sat back down, elbows on the table, fingers interlaced. He didn't raise his voice. Miss Cole, he said evenly, as a licensed auditor, are you submitting this as part of an official report? I met his eyes. Yes. As of this moment, it's entered into the record. The audit begins today. No dramatics, no pauses. Just fact. Dropped like a depth charge in a glass room full of lies. The associate began typing again, fast. Another reached for his phone. Harrow nodded slowly, exhaling once. Understood, he said. We'll notify the Oversight Committee. Effective immediately, all investment activity with Halbrook Systems is suspended. No shouting, no chaos. Just the sound of everything Carter built collapsing quietly in real time. The words hit the air like a quiet explosion. No one gasped. No one argued. It was simply done. Another associate stood up. I'll coordinate with our regulatory counsel. We'll need to document the chain of custody for these materials. He gestured toward my binder. I slid it across the glass table, already labeled, color-coded, and indexed. Harrow gave a single approving nod. You'll receive follow-up from our compliance division within 48 hours, he said. In the meantime, we consider you, given your credentials, the only verified point of trust within Halbrook systems. The phrase point of trust landed like a gavel. Outside the glass, Carter was pacing, his hands cutting through the air, mouthing frantic half-sentences. I couldn't hear him, but I didn't need to. I'd seen the performance before. Denial, blame, self-victimization, all the stages of a corporate implosion. And this time, there was no one left to applaud. Because through that glass wall, even he could see it. The investors were gathered around me, not him. Harrow shook my hand. Another partner took a photo of the binder for records. A third quietly called the board's emergency session line. Within minutes, security, real security, not the culture team Carter once bragged about, appeared outside the conference room. They weren't loud or aggressive. They didn't have to be. Their suits and silence spoke volumes. Carter froze mid-step, realizing the show was over. He didn't yell. He just stared, face drained, eyes wide, as Harrow handed me a card embossed with the Lurwin Partners insignia. You'll be hearing from the board, he said. Not my board. Theirs. By 4:15 p.m., the internal Slack exploded. Effective immediately. Carter Langford has been removed from his position as acting CEO pending formal review. 10 minutes later, a second message arrived from legal. All investor communications paused. Third-party audit underway. Preserve all correspondence. I sat still for a moment, watching the ripples unfold across the company channels like shockwaves. Messages flew. Questions? Disbelief? Silence. Priya DM'd me. What happened? I typed back only 3 words. Documentation. Always matters. I gathered my things slowly. The binder, my laptop, the pen I'd used to write Appendix A. I walked past the now empty hallway toward the glass-walled office where Carter sat alone, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. He didn't look up as I passed, but his reflection in the glass followed me. Small, stunned, hollow. The once visionary CEO reduced to a man who'd finally read the fine print on his own downfall. Outside, the late afternoon sun bled through the blinds, striping the carpet with gold and gray. I stopped at the elevator, the binder heavy in my hand. People fight in different ways. Some shout, some quit. Me? I document. I record. I timestamp. I let the paper speak when people stop listening. The elevator doors slid open. I stepped inside and pressed the button for the ground floor. My reflection stared back at me in the brushed metal panel. Tired, steady, unshaken. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. Justice doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it comes with a PDF attachment. When I reached the lobby, a familiar voice called my name. It was Josh, clutching his own laptop bag, eyes wide. Is it true? He's out? I nodded once, and, you? He asked hesitantly. I adjusted the strap on my shoulder. Still handling the paperwork, I said. His expression flickered between confusion and awe. I left him standing there, mouth open, as the doors to the street hissed open. The cool air hit my face like punctuation. The noise of the city, car horns, chatter, distant sirens, felt sharper, clearer, almost symphonic. I crossed the street, my phone buzzing with notifications from LinkedIn and internal messages. Someone had leaked the memo already. Carter's temporary leave was trending on local startup boards before I'd even reached the corner cafe. I ordered black coffee, no sugar, sat near the window, and opened my laptop. My inbox pinged. New mail from Federal Risk and Authorization Office. Your active status has been verified. Please retain this message for official record keeping. I smiled for the first time all day. In the end, Carter never really understood the power he mocked. Paperwork isn't background noise. It's infrastructure. It's law. It's proof. And when someone like me, someone dismissed as a paper pusher, keeps the receipts, the lies eventually audit themselves. I took a slow sip of coffee, the warmth cutting through the chill that had followed me all year. Outside, the world kept moving. Emails, traffic, meetings. But for once, it didn't feel like I was chasing it. The audit had started. This was Exhibit A, and I was finally done staying quiet.